So how many individual stocks should you have in your portfolio? So let's start with how many I actually have. I'm not saying I have the right amount because the research that I did proves otherwise, but I thought I would share how much I have. I have 14 single stocks and 2 exchange traded funds. But let's go into what the research says. Okay, first we have to talk about risk. There are 2 types of risk when we're talking about the stock market. There's the overall market risk and then there's your individual portfolio risk. So with general market risk, if the market moves in one direction, generally most companies will follow. So if there's a fall, generally most companies fall, and if there's a rise, most companies rise. Of course, it doesn't happen with every single company, but overall the market as a whole and the companies involved tend to move in very consistent ways to each other. So the second type of risk is your personal portfolio risk, so the companies that you hold and how many of them that you do hold. So the less companies that you hold, the more risk that you take on because you're more reliant on what those individual companies are doing. If you say held one company that got into tough times and the price fell, that means your entire portfolio is falling because it's reliant on just that one company. But say you had that company and you had 10, 15 others and that company only maybe made up 2-3% of your portfolio, then even if that company fell, it's not going to make that much of an impact to the whole of your portfolio because the rest of the companies should be stable given the right conditions. So that's why people are going on about diversification, because it's lowering your risk and it's a risk that you can manage, that you can control. So simply by having enough companies in your portfolio, you mitigate any risk that one single company might do. And yes, it works both ways. So not only can it stop the loss if one company goes down, it can also stop the gains if one company goes really high. That means that the more companies you hold, the more likely your portfolio is to move with the market. So it is possible to be over diversified. Now there's nothing wrong with strong diversification, but it does mean that you're unlikely to beat the market because now your portfolio is more aligned to the market as a whole. And that's why ETFs and in particular index funds are so popular. You get that instant diversification and your only risk is market risk rather than portfolio risk, depending on the ETF or index fund that you hold. So if you're buying individual companies, you don't want to hold too few that you just have too much risk, but you don't want to hold too many that you're over diversified and you might as well just buy an ETF instead. So how many stocks is that sweet spot? There have been a number of different studies done on this. Probably the 2 most popular one of them is a little outdated now, but it's still the one that most people refer to. That's the 1970 study published in the journal Business. They looked at returns for 45 specific periods ranging from 1 to 40 years from the years 1926 to 1965. It is a little old, but they concluded that about 30 stocks was ideal. And this is the study that most people still link to. And there's another book that a lot of people refer to. It's called The Investment Analysis and Portfolio Management by Frank Riley and Keith Brown. They concluded that you get the maximum benefit of diversification with just 12 to 18 stocks. And I can't go into this without talking about Warren Buffett because he's an investor that most people look up to. So through Berkshire Hathaway, he owns about 40 stocks, but he does have a lot more money to spread around than most people do. But interestingly, half of his portfolio, around 50%, is made up of just one company, Apple. And it's the other half that makes up the rest of the companies that he owns. So what can we conclude from this? What's the magic number? So if we combine all the research and the available data, it seems that if you're not a billionaire, that around 25 stocks is the perfect sweet spot. This is the amount that you'll get really good diversification, and adding more after this is really not going to make any marginal difference. I think you could probably hold less than 25 if you also include some either index funds or exchange traded funds because they're going to give you that diversification. But if you're just holding single stocks, individual companies, then 25 seems to be the sweet spot. So while my 14 and 2 ETFs isn't too bad, I may have to start shopping for a few extra companies. So in future videos, I do want to go into how to further diversify your portfolio by looking at different sectors, because you don't want to put, say if you buy 25 companies, you don't want to put them all in the same sector. You want to spread to 5 or 6 or maybe even more different sectors. Plus, I wouldn't mind also looking at how to allocate, how much money to put into each stock, what the studies and research shows on that. I think that'd be really interesting as well. But anyway, that's your answer. 25 seems to be the sweet spot. Hope you enjoyed this video and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.